As mayor of Cleveland, Kucinich has served on the Cleveland City Council. He served as the clerk of courts for the Cleveland Municipal Court. He has been Ohio State Senator, and in November of 2010, he was elected to his 8th term as member of the United States House of Representatives. Yeah, give it up. No small feat in what we just saw happen. Since being elected to Congress in 1996, Kucinich has been a tireless advocate for workers' rights, civil rights, and human rights. In Congress, yes. In Congress, Kucinich has authored and co-sponsored legislation to create a national health care system, preserve Social Security, lower the cost of prescription drugs. He has created the Department of Peace. He has regulated GMOs. Give it up for GMOs. He has repealed the U.S. Patriot Act and has provided tax relief to working-class families across this country. There's no better person for the people than Dennis Kucinich. He was just interviewed by Amy Goodman, and she said, what is the most critical issue right now? And he said, to stop the wars. Would you please give a warm Green Festival Seattle welcome to Dennis Kucinich, our congressman from the state of Ohio?
This is such an important festival, and it's so important that the larger community be aware of exactly what's happening here. All over this center, you have individuals who have devoted their lives to expressing the possibility and the potential that we have to make this a better world. And so I would ask you to join with me in saluting all those who put together this important Greens Festival. Thank you. I remember walking the trails in Mount Rainier, and I brought a book of poetry with me. And he spoke about the month of June. But in his words, we see reflected the beauty of nature. And in his words, we get a feeling for the yearning that we have to be close to nature, and the sense that we have that would bring us to a conference like this. He wrote, "And what is so rare as a day in June? Then, if ever, come perfect days, when heaven tries earth, if it be in tune, and over it softly her warm ear lays." This poem by James Russell Lowell, I think, is an appropriate touchstone for this setting today, particularly the words about every clod or every piece of earth feels a stir of might, about the power that is in nature, an instinct within it that reaches and towers, that when we connect to the natural world, we get a sense of the beauty of life and of the power of life and of our own wonderful place in the scheme of things, and of the responsibility that we have to be able to achieve an at-one-ment, that we really connect from the heart with this natural world, that we overcome the estrangement that we sometimes feel from the natural world based on interventions, human interventions in the natural world. And so, this afternoon, I want to talk to you about the myriad of elements that are involved in our quest to uphold the natural world, to effect a reconnection with it, to restore it, and to find a way to make that the great cause of our life, as Thomas Berry reflected on our responsibility to restore our relationship with nature. We start understanding that there are certain preconditions for life on this planet. And in those preconditions, we understand our responsibility to look at the constituent elements that foster life on this planet and know that it is our stewardship which needs to be effective in first protecting the air, because our relationship with the air determines whether or not we'll have the ability to survive and that our own lungs are pure. Our relationship with the air determines whether the lungs of Mother Earth will be able to survive the pollution that occurs. Our relationship with the air is such that we come into resonance with air as a significant element in creation. Our relationship with the water, and since we are made up of water, is so essential. When you consider what's happening in our world today with the diminishing supply of freshwater resources, with the potential of conflict over water rights, and it's happened in many places, with the attempt to privatize water resources, with the spoliation of water, which comes through chemicals that find their way into water systems, with the attempt to cause water to become a commodity on an international basis. In my own state of Ohio, I've seen international efforts made to bring tankers into Lake Erie, part of the chain of Great Lakes, which represents the largest supply of fresh water in the world, to commodify this water, take it out in tankers. We were able to stop that working with activists in Canada, but we understood, and thank you, but we understood that this had relevance not just for our area, but it had relevance for all of humanity, because water is a precondition of life on the planet, and it's a precondition of our own lives. When we understand that this terra firma, this land, this Mother Earth that we speak of, is a physical presence in our life, and that we have to, it's the place of reference, it's the place where we stand, it's the place where we work out our destiny. We come to know how we have this responsibility to be stewards of this land. Now, for those who are familiar with the story in Genesis 1:28, there's a passage that's widely misunderstood. Some interpret it as saying that that human beings were supposed to subdue the earth. Others interpret it as saying we're to have dominion over the earth, or control over the earth. When a closer inspection of the principles that were behind that spiritual teaching relates to being a steward of the earth. Now, there's a debate as to whether or not Chief Seattle actually said this or not, what I'm about to quote. But if we know anything about Chief Seattle, we could assume that he may have said it, and that is that the earth doesn't belong to us. We belong to the earth. And this teaching is a profoundly spiritual teaching that prepares us for an understanding of what the appropriate relationship should be between ourselves and the earth. To leave a light footprint, to literally tread softly, to understand that this earth presents us with a habitat where we can work out our destiny, but there's another way of thinking which says that we're here to subdue the earth, we're here to conquer the earth, we're here to extract from the earth, we're here to mine the earth, we're here to drill the earth, we're here to fracture the earth, and what comes next? We're the ones who have the stewardship to heal the earth. We're the ones who have the responsibility to question the technologies that have injured the earth. And we're the ones that have the obligation to cause our political systems to come to bear to protect the earth. And so we think about the preconditions for life. The air, the water, the land, but we also can't think of it in terms of our own selves. There's a type of thinking that puts mankind at the apex of all creatures, great and small. But there's another type of thinking that is holistic and integrative, that says that we are part of a seamless web of life, and that we have no claim to existence that should supersede that of any other creature who's part of life. And in effect, that we're all in this together. And so we're called upon to, in a world where there's conflicting ideologies about what our purpose is on this planet, we're called upon to make conscious decisions every day about what kind of world do we want. And the fact of the matter is that if you start with our individual selves, when we are aware of the connection between what we think, the connection between the consciousness that we have, the connection between the working of spirit through us and the working of the spirit of the world with us, we then come to an understanding of the critical necessity of linking thought, word, and deed. That if we are to repair our relationship with the natural world, we can't think green and act in a different way. We can't speak of green and then do something different. That the restoration and the maintenance of this world itself depends on integrity. It depends on us having a real connection between what we think, what we say, and what we do. And it is that connection which helps us that we can use in integrating through our own being the power of our thinking, our mind at work in our community as well as in the universe, our working through spirit, and having our physical selves being present to be the active doers in the community, to have our hands on every opportunity that we can to make this world a more gentle place and a more sustainable place. We have a challenge, though. We have an economic system that is devoted to extraction. We have an economic system that is devoted to destruction of the natural world. We have an economic system where a few profit at the expense of the many. We have an economic system which has been capable of splitting the atom, but in doing so, helped to provoke what I would say would be a split consciousness of us versus them, a split consciousness of who we are versus the natural world. It's a condition that the writer Morris Berman talked about over 30 years ago when he made a call for what he described as the re-enchantment of the world, as the necessity for us to move away from the predations which have visited us in the wake of the Industrial Revolution and to move towards a rapprochement, a reuniting with the natural world. And in doing that, we help to heal ourselves as well as help to heal the natural world, because we are at a time in human history where the very meaning of what it is to be human is under attack. that we're being told that only if we participate in the exploitation of our environment can we survive. We're being told that only if we split the atom and create nuclear power are we going to be able to survive. We're being told that only if we go along with the experiment that is genetically modified organisms will we survive. We're being told that only if we continue to use hydrocarbon-based energy will we survive. And I say that we might be told that, but we know better, and we have a responsibility to chart a new course for this world which connects us in harmony with nature and in harmony with the forces of nature. We are told that war is inevitable. And when we buy into that type of thinking, we are then locked into the self-fulfilling prophecy of war. You wonder why we never get out of war. You wonder why governments plunge into war. You wonder why war has such a hold on the world. You wonder why the thought of war is something that people will turn to first when they've been offended or they're in a conflict. You wonder what is it about the human condition that some would try to keep the yoke of war on the back of humanity. And I tell you that we have the obligation to challenge this thinking which visits upon us not only poverty, not only desperation, not only a disconnection from our loved ones and our brothers and sisters around the world, but which carries in its grasp the ability to create ecocide and the end of the species. We must challenge war, and we must end war before war ends us. And when you come to understand that the call for human unity is the fundamental call of our times, that we are all one, that we are interconnected and interdependent, and that the type of thinking that would separate us needs to be set aside in favor of a more integrative approach, in favor of an understanding of the power of a holistic view of the world. We can, through our own thoughts, begin to transform the world. But we have to believe we have the capacity to do that. We have to believe we have the capacity to indulge in what the philosopher Thomas Berry called that great work. The great work of reconnecting with the natural world, of healing the natural world, of finding a way to restore the land, to restore the water, to restore the air. There is such power in that kind of common unity. Thomas Berry called it a communion, that we are a communion of subjects. And that if we understand that, we then have the ability of overriding the economic systems that would have us believe that we must only pursue one path. We have an ability of challenging the political systems which speak to certain inevitabilities when we know it's not right. And we have the ability of being able to foster the kind of unity which we yearn for. We have the ability to give back what has been taken away, to be the healers of the breach, to be those who come to a resonance with nature. The reconnection to the natural world is something that then enables us to truly champion sustainability. Now, it's not government, by the way, that in and of itself is going to save the planet. I think that we have to understand the limitations of government. I would say government's inability to come to a full understanding of the challenges we meet or face, frankly, raises serious questions about the legitimacy of a nation state. If you can't come together to solve problems, if you can't come together to heal the environment, if you can't come together to serve people's economic needs, if the only reason we come together is for war, then what is this about? We must be about more than that. We must be about creating opportunities not just economic opportunities, but coming in harmony with nature so that we can have an opportunity to thrive and to survive. Let's talk about what individuals can do in reconnecting with the natural world. Let's talk about what we can do that will move these institutions we know as government to a higher level of understanding of what's possible. What we can do begins with something very simple, and that is with our diets. Now, there was a time when I had a pretty conventional diet, maybe too much quantity, but meat, potatoes, dairy, and I had some serious health problems that I couldn't figure out why I was not able to shake. And then when I began to change my diet in 1995, the Crohn's disease that I was dealing with from the time I was a child suddenly began to dissipate. But I changed my diet to a vegan diet, and I started to see the symptoms, the physical symptoms that I had started to disappear. And then I went to a slightly different kind of medicine. Well, I have a respect for allopathic medicine. I began to use more alternative medicine and experience Chinese herbal medicine, and those two things gave me a path towards healing. Now, no one could give that to me. I had to take responsibility for my own diet. And as I did that for health, then I came to an understanding of what role I had in the dietary choices I was making, what role that has in the planet. I found out that for 1 pound of meat, it takes 7 pounds of grain to make it. I found out about all the water that needs to be made to make that pound of beef. I found out about how a great contributor to our environmental crisis is the entire endeavor of livestock production. You don't really know anything. It was nothing I had thought about before I changed my diet, but then I understood that my diet had some connection to sustainability. And I understood my diet had an ability to change my relationship with the natural world, and that my diet had the ability to show compassion to animals, and that the diet had the ability to enable me to connect more, in a more profound way, from my own experience with spirit. There's a book that I read that really has a way of putting it all together, is by Will Tuttle, who talks about the World Peace Diet. Michio Kushi has also written a similar book about the role of diet in being able to reconnect us with the natural world and reconnect us with better choices so that we respect the earth and have a more sustainable approach. My own journey, as with many of you, has been about what we can do as individual consumers. Now, throughout this Green Festival, we see how many business people have been able to catch the rhythm of consumers demanding more environmentally responsible products, and we get a chance to vote on that every day with the money that we have for the purchases we have, and this is our power here. This is what we can do to guide the market that actually trumps whatever government might do or might not do. It is up to us. It is up to us to make the choices. When I talk about reconnecting the natural world, I talk about my own experience that I had here 30 years ago in loving the opportunity to go through the trails in this area. I think also about the opportunity I had at night to contemplate the stars. You know, if you've gone around Rainier at night where there's no light pollution, you can see a magnitude of stars of maybe 8, 8.5. It's an extraordinary experience. But when you do that, you get a real sense of humility about how vast the universe is and what our place in it is. And you get a respect for nature, and you get a profound connection with all that ever existed through time. And you understand the responsibility we have to try to protect that experience for everyone who would come after us. Before I came here on stage, I saw a 4-month-old child backstage, Lorena, I think her name is, and you realize the responsibility that we take as stewards of this planet to know that this isn't just about us. This is about generations to come. We're told that we should live in a way where 7 generations to come would be protected. That's why we're here. We celebrate that ethic. We celebrate a philosophy of commonality here. We understand that we can do things individually, but we also understand the power of mass action. I was here in 1999 marching in the streets of Seattle to say that we have to have environmental quality principles in our trade agreement, that we have to protect workers' rights, that we have to protect human rights. We can do that through our purchases, but we have to insist on the potential that we have to use our own self, to be involved, not to stand back. We need to go back to the streets to demand that our government pay attention to cleaning up to the environment. We need to go back to the streets to demand that our government gets out of these wars. We need to go back to the streets to demand that our government rededicate itself to the kind of democratic principles that we know we're capable of standing for. And so, my friends, we are capable of taking these principles, these spiritual principles, and infusing them into the material world and helping elevate this material world. We've been given an Eden and we need to protect it. We've been given a life that is so sacred and we need to make sure it's always replenished and restored. We've been given an opportunity to commune with nature, to get in touch with that great spirit that moves through us and in us and with us. And we've been given an opportunity to defend that. And that, in truth, the great work of our life shall ever be letting that principle work through us, letting it work through our hands and our hearts, and making sure that we work together to create the beloved community. Thank you very much. Thank you for your commitment. Love to all of you. Thank you.